Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Quest Me, the Star Wars podcast that takes you on a quest through legends and new canon. Of course, my name is Josh. I am your forever host, and of course, we are part of the Twist My Arm podcast. You can find us anywhere just by searching Twist My Arm. That's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. Just search Twist My Arm, and you'll find us. This season, we're talking about The Acolyte, probably one of the more controversial shows since Obi-Wan Kenobi, funny enough. But it's been a fun ride. This week, Justin unfortunately had a weird mishap with the schedule, and he's not going to be here tonight. But that's okay. We wish him a very happy trip to wherever vacation destination he is going. We do, however, have our good friend Phil here today. Thanks for being here, Phil.
Good to be here as always.
If you ever forgot that your flight was indeed today and not tomorrow, would you live through the night?
No, no, I would not.
I just I wish Justin the best of luck with his endeavor. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you didn't forget any trips or anything, and that you're still here with us.
For the
How's the
time being.
yeah? How's the Ren Fair going?
It's not going too bad. We're just over halfway through, and
Yeah.
we are heading into Pirate Invasion weekend this Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, that's got to
It
be your
is
favorite weekend, right?
it's the best. It is unfortunately also supposed to be like the hottest weekend of like the whole festival so far. They're talking like heat warnings, like triple digit heat warnings up and down the front range.
Oh, geez.
So gotta stay hydrated. Like
I was just gonna say,
actually
stay
like
hydrated.
water hydrated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're gonna be in that crazy costume, and it's gonna be hot as hail. So I wish you the best of luck on that. And definitely stay hydrated. And people that are going to the Ren Fair or doing anything out in that heat, stay hydrated. And like Phil said, with water, not booze. It's not the same. Drink water. Um, Speaking of drinking water, we have a very wonderful friend of mine on the show today. He actually was on the second ever episode of the Twist My Arm podcast. You could go all the way back in the Twist My Arm classic episodes and find the episode here with Mr. Nate. Thanks for coming back, sir.
Josh, it's absolutely great to be here, man. It's crazy. I know you came on the Rocky Mountain Sports Room. We got to have you on there as a guest, and Steve, Ben, our other hosts. If you're listening, I'll just say it was really nice to have somebody on the show that actually knows something about basketball. Hopefully, we can have you back at some point because I'm tired of listening to those guys talk football and then pivot over to thinking they have an opinion that weighs in on the Nuggets. But now that I've started that fight, which I wasn't intending to start, I mean, it's great to be here. Excited to talk some Star Wars. Phil, it's nice to meet you. And
Likewise, man.
I would not go to the Ren Fair this weekend with that heat if you paid me, if I did not have to dress up like a pirate. So props to you for going down there and doing that, man, because it's been hard to pry me outside in 90-degree days.
Hey, that's fair enough, man. It's all good.
Yeah, there's no way. I have a hard time just going outside right now. I mean, it's humid as hell in Nebraska. So with the heat, you add the humidity, and it's pretty rough. But man, going to the just going out at any point in time during a heat wave like that does not sound like a good time to me. So, yeah, but thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to talk about this week. You know, I watched this episode the other day, and I was having a really bad toothache, and I was kind of medicated and fell asleep. I was falling in and out of sleep during the episode. And from what I saw, I literally just thought I was watching episode 3, Destiny, which is why I called this episode the director's cut, Destiny, the director's cut, because it seemed like it was just when I first did the whole thing, named the episode and everything, it was like, well, it's just like episode 3, but with 10 minutes of extra footage. So it's like a director's cut. But upon second watch, I actually had a lot more fun when I was like coherent and awake. This episode was actually really, really good. So I do have some qualms with it. Especially that music at the end. Why? That I'm just gonna bring it up now. Why? There's
Why vocals?
just the pop aspect in general. That's never been a thing, especially like English language pop music. I mean,
And
there's
not an
been
in-universe
yeah.
kind of thing.
I listened to the whole song the second time through. I listened to the whole thing. I gave it a good old college try, and I just can't. I it was very out of pocket, I think, for Star Wars. Did you guys listen to the whole thing?
Pop song in the end credits of this one or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, all right, because I told you I just watched this one, like not today, but last night. I guess I skipped it for the first week correctly. I did not catch that. I'm gonna go back. That sounds ridiculous.
I mean, there's
It was a choice.
Is this as bad as like suddenly busting into like a pop song at Jabba's level of music, or
No, it was just a little jarring given kind of the tone of the ending of things.
it didn't seem like it lent itself to a happy like pop song ending.
Yeah, no, it was
no, and thanks Jesse for being here.
oh shit.
He says, unfortunately, that song was solid, and I mean, for a pop song, it's a cool song, but like, I just,
Hey.
Are we talking Taylor Swift or?
Not to be that guy. He also says not to be that guy, but Star Trek actor has a single called Twin Flames. I mean, that's normal. Star Trek also had a musical episode, which was groundbreaking, and it was really good. But like, they're a little more experimental over there, and Star Trek always has been a little more experimental. Star Wars has always kind of stuck to a certain formula when it comes to, their scores and their soundtracks, and so it just, for me, I don't know. I just don't think. No, and he's right. It's not he says Jesse says it's not a happy song at all. It's not. It's about like the episode basically. It's very, very sad, but just the fact that it's a pop song was weird to me. So
I'm going to go back and check it out.
No,
I might be coming back around tomorrow to be like, Josh, what are you talking about? That's the track of the year.
It threw me a little bit. I will admit it threw me a little bit. But I did appreciate it more on a second listen through.
I mean, okay, that's fair. It's a good song. It's just, I just don't think it was
a Star
really
Wars
meant to be
song.
there. Yeah, it's weird. But anyway, we'll move on from there. We are 7 episodes deep. Thanks, Jesse. So we're 7 episodes deep now, and we have 1 episode to go, and we got pretty much all the answers from previous episodes, except for like Chimere. We didn't get any answers about Chimere or anything like that, but that was to be expected with a flashback episode.
Yes.
Nate, what have been your, actually, before I get into that, I'm sorry. I need to start over. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. You've always liked Star Wars for the most part. What got you into Star Wars?
I really can't remember the first time I saw Star Wars. I know that there's a lot of cool things about growing up nowadays. The kids have and everything like that, but something that they won't have is like a huge cabinet of totally legally recorded TV movies, right? And so just going through all of those tapes and finding the one that said Star Wars, like Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and just watching them and fast forwarding through the commercial breaks. And like, I don't think I actually saw the theatrical cuts until the re-released in theaters. I saw them out of sequence. Like, I didn't see the A New Hope until I had already seen Empire Strikes Back like 50 times as a kid.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I think I got into a more visible spot, but I'm not thinking right now. Somewhere up there in the background of crap that might be showing behind me. I've still got I have like 8 VHS tapes left and 6 of them are, you know, the original trilogy and the director's cut of the
Yeah.
trilogy, right?
Nice.
So, been a huge lifelong fan. You know, I think one of the times we talked Star Wars on a podcast, you know, might have been back in the beginning days of Twist My Arm, and you kind of said like, oh, okay, so you're like a purist. When I was saying I didn't really recognize these new Star Wars movies, they didn't feel like Star Wars, and I'll take the prequels, plushes and all, like that Star Wars. This really has been my first like re-engagement with Star Wars since the Skywalker trilogy kind of just pushed me away. And honestly, like, was kind of on the fence about watching it. And then you said, "Hey, would you plan on watching it? We'd love to have you come on the show." And I thought, all my humor, Josh. It can't be worse than Solo, right? And
Oh,
I've actually been slightly surprised. Like, it's not, you know, blowing my mind or anything like that. But we talked about before we started shooting, right? Like, I'm surprised that if anything Disney has created Star Wars, if anything's going to create backlash and have fans saying we don't like this one would be the last one I would expect. That confuses me more than anything. Like, it's not the greatest thing they've ever made, but I've been pretty proud of the season so far.
Yeah.
So, all in all, you've thought The Acolyte has been like solid. Like, are you excited for the season finale?
Excited and I'm worried. Like, I was worried. Oh my god! I mean, we talk about a few different times when I was worried during the series, and a lot of those around Carrie Ann Moss. But he's dead as long as we don't flash back again. So like, I think we should be okay. I was worried once we got to about episode 5 or so. Like, okay, you guys only have 8 episodes. Did you write yourself into a corner? And then, you know, this last one, director's cut of episode 3, right, where we got to see kind of what really happened 16 years ago. That was awesome. But all I could think the whole time I was watching it was, crap, now you guys only have 45 minutes left to wrap this up. And I know it's not a movie, it's a show, but season 2 isn't a given. And wherever they're going with it, it's just hope they're able to pull it all off in like 45 to 50 minutes. And I'm really hoping they don't cop out because, you know, I think there was some serious cop out in the Captain Kennedy trilogy. And I feel like so far they're leaning into some of that darker side of the Force type stuff and the fact that not everybody's perfect. And I'm hoping that leaves it. I hope this season ends leaving me wanting more of feeling like some dark times might be ahead, you know, and not falling into that trap, wanting to wrap everything up and make everybody good. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
enjoying
fair.
it. I'm excited for the finale, but I'm worried they're not going to stick the landing.
It's understandable.
I mean, and that's a very fair assessment. I do love the dark side aspect of this show. That's been my favorite part. That's been the biggest draw to this show since they announced it, was that it's going to be more of a dark side story and less of a heroic, you know, triumphant Jedi story. And I do agree. I would like this show to end with a little bit more, Jesse says, question. Will the show end on a cliffhanger, angling for a second season? And I think there's already cliffhangers going on right now. The Senate wanting to do an audit on the Jedi is a pretty big like storyline that they could run with in the second season. Now with this episode, we have a character that's missing that could show up in the second season with a story arc. And who knows what's going to happen in the season finale? Like, we could be left with a ton of questions. So, yeah, this episode was really good. It got us through like Brendock finally. That's like been our biggest thing, is I just wanted to know what happened on Brendock. My synopsis for this was, and again, I wrote this like a while ago. And it's in the director's cut of episode 3, we get 10 minutes of never before seen footage. We finally get to see what happened all that time ago on Brendock. But was it satisfying, or were we left with more questions and answers? See, I wrote that before I watched it again. But then after I watched it again, I was like, well, it's just too funny. I got to leave it in. So we did actually get a lot of questions answered, but we did get a lot more questions kind of thrown at us. So we'll get into those as they arise. But Phil, what were your impressions of episode 7? Like what were your thoughts after watching?
Overall,
Mhm.
we got to see the same director. Kogonada was back directing this, which only made sense since he had directed the previous flashback episode.
Right.
It's kind of interesting because, like, outside of a lot of South Korean film work, most of his stuff is like done as supplemental videos. Like, he does essays and things to go as extras on Criterion Collection releases.
Mm.
So he's got an incredible eye, and it was just fun to see him kind of show off as a director a little more.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah, and
I think it was necessary to have him back behind the camera for this episode in order to make that whole structure still feel like the same time period, to make it feel like the
well,
same event.
and to be fair, I bet he just directed both episodes at the same time.
Probably. But regardless, being able to have him have that perspective on both of these parts of the story.
Yes.
And
have that
and it,
eye for that perspective to like tell the story that he did was
Mhm.
was pretty well done, because
and to be able to set it up and frame it so that we got enough of a different perspective, enough of a different bit of story with this. I do like how much of the same kind of stuff we saw in the overlap, but getting it from, not the exact same camera angles, not getting all of the exact same elements. It definitely, I think it definitely nailed that whole the whole Rashomon effect that it's been going for, that the series has been going for.
Okay, and that was one of my questions actually, was where do we stand with the
Yeah.
whole Rashomon thing? So
I think it was well done.
all right.
But I've also rewatched Rashomon fairly recently,
Okay.
like within the last few months, to just kind of have that. I Not even specifically because of this, but honestly, just because I like Kurosawa as a filmmaker. So
Well, but it does help. It kind of gives you a better idea of I need to go back and watch that so I can actually know where they're pulling their, inspirations from, because
yeah,
I like talking about it, but of course I'm like, oh, I've only read, the synopses of the movies, and like I just have never had access to that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
I'm sure with the internet now, I'm sure I could find it pretty easily.
yeah.
So
But yeah, I enjoyed it. And I can almost guarantee you I'm going to rate this one higher than you. But
probably my rating has already gone up a lot since the second watch of it. So
but I also know I'm coming into this, I as I do any of these stories, I'm coming in with an English major's perspective on narrative structure and things like that. So,
and with that perspective, is it living up to what it was like kind of putting down?
yeah, no, I mean it's hitting a lot of the pretty consistent story beats. I think it's actually being better paced. I honestly think that we could have gotten some more characterization. Jesse mentioned Torben again here. We
Oh yeah.
see a lot from him in this episode in a very few scenes. I
Yeah.
think we got solid characterization out of everybody. It's fascinating to see kind of the conflict in the Jedi's motives throughout this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, what did you think about, like, after this episode? Like, what were your thoughts as far as how the flashback was handled and stuff?
I thought it was really good. I mean, honestly, I'm a fan of show don't tell. If you want to write a book, write a book. That's awesome. And one of the reasons I hate Carrie Moss as an actress is all she literally does is talk about how she's feeling and showing you that. But the episode, like her part's notwithstanding, because dude, I can't tell you how loud I cheered when she died, like 10 seconds into the show, because I was like, thank God. Oh my God, I did not want to have to watch her. She's probably a really nice lady. She's not act. Go watch The Matrix. Tell me her best scene in The Matrix. We're not just saying Neo. We have to such and such. I just, she's terrible. She was
I don't
decent.
think I've.
So that's the only whatever. Not my point. I got sidetracked on Carrie Moss hatred, right? It was a lot better than I thought it would be. It honestly was. I was worried, like I said, pacing wise, that they don't have time to go back and retell that part of the story. But it was visual storytelling. Like so much of it was subtle. They could have easily come in and said, "Oh, this part's different," or really made sure to call your attention to it. And you know, as we sit here and talk about it more, I'm realizing it really does deserve at least a second viewing.
Mm-hmm.
But just the slight differences, right? Like why they were there, the actual motives of what brought them there in the first place, and what they actually saw, and what actually, the actual decision the soul made in terms of actually saving Ocean, not May, and what that meant and everything, and just the fact that they kind of just let you watch it and internalize what didn't jive with the version that you were told before. I thought very well into the kind of ending of just like, we're not telling the council what happened. Like, want to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah, that was interesting. I feel like Indara is just kind of like, I don't know. She really likes keeping secrets. There's one big thing that I think she's kind of keeping a secret about later on, but we'll get into that. I did want to just kind of talk about the very beginning. They've been on this island or whatever, this planet, for 7 weeks, and they're just now noticing the witches are there. I don't understand. Are they that inept? Like, is that are the Jedi just not that good right now? Are we supposed to believe that, or were they really? See, I guess going back and thinking about it, were they more just like exploring the entire planet, and now they're just finally running into these witches?
That was my kind of impression, was that they'd been assigned to Brendok and had been there for a while. Just given Torben's level of patience, it didn't seem like that was the kind of stress that would have built up after like a week-long camping trip to go do some surveys.
Yeah. But
my guess is they had been elsewhere on Brendok and just ended up near the coven at the wrong time, or the right time. I mean, we'll see.
yeah, and that's another theory, is
And
that the
yeah,
witches are
Jesse,
actually.
But it's hard to say if that would make it more, harder for them to be found by non-Jedi, definitely. But
You would
that
think Jedi would be able to sense that either way.
right, if there's suddenly a big gap in the Force, just like a void somewhere. Oh,
I'm
hey,
thinking about that myself, just in the sense of, the prequels, right? They all the time mention that the dark side has kind of clouded their vision, or it's tough to see, and those types of things. And I was kind of thinking maybe it was something like that, but like, even are they like, they're Force sensitive, but you can't really classify them as Sith or Jedi. They're like primal Force users. I don't know exactly, but to me, I agree with you. I think they've been there for a while and eventually just stumbled across them.
So there's Leslie Headland actually talks about that. There's an interview that she talks about the witches, and they're not fully Night Sister, but they're like kind of in between. So there's more, like, I have a pretty fun piece of that interview later on about one of these witches. and it kind of leads to another thread that could be filled up in later seasons,
Mhm.
and even later on in like canon. You know what I mean? Um, if gosh, I guess at the beginning that it's basically just introducing all of the Jedi and how Torben's an impatient, whiny little and and Indara's like the leader, Kelnaka's, the muscle, and it seems like
And the tech
Soul is
guy.
like yeah, the tech guy, you're right. And the metal detector guy. That's weird. Um but Soul is like this very eager to please, but also like like wanting he gets ahead of himself. Like, he's talking about his Padawan, or how, there's an instance where Indara and him are talking, and she's like, "That's why I have a Padawan and you don't."
Yeah.
And that's actually that's my one chimer. I'm gonna do this like we did last week, and I'm actually gonna play my segments as they appear.
They
So
appear.
that is my one chimer, and I'm gonna play it right now.
I was disturbed. Unbalanced.
You were disturbed. Do not confuse Torben's feelings with your own. I do not tell him answers to ease his mind. I teach him to seek the answers for himself.
So that to me just proved how much of a leader Indara was in this whole scenario, this whole scene, and like how much better of a Jedi she is than Soul at the moment.
Mhm.
Because right after that is basically when she's like, "Oh, you disagree," and he's like, "Blah, blah," and then she says, "That's why I have a Padawan." So that kind of also gives us this idea that Soul is, you know, like he wants that kind of Padawan, and that leads in later on with Osha and how like it's kind of a weird obsession. I feel like
It's
with
such
Soul.
a nice parallel to Chimere. They both just want an apprentice. They want an acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that kind of dark mirror there for Soul. And I'm
Yeah,
sure that is probably the most terrifying thing about Chimere's existence to him, is
right.
very much that could have been me.
Yeah. Man. See, and I want to know Chimere's backstory more than anything. Like, was he there? Because we didn't really see how May survived. So what happened with that? But this actually getting into Soul and his like obsession with these girls. He finds the girls. He like stumbles upon the girls in this meadow. That's actually Justin's Sarlacc killer scene at the 5 minute and 44-second mark, where he walks into the meadow with that. What tree is that again?
The Bunta tree.
Okay, so yeah, he's like stumbles on the Bunta tree and hears the little girls playing, and he starts kind of watching them, and gets all worried because Coral shows up and kind of she's like, "Oh, you're breaking the rules," blah blah blah. What were your like impressions of Soul now? Is he like slowly in these scenes changing your mind about him? Because by the end of this episode, I feel like I respected him a little less.
Oh, I think we're definitely supposed to see this as kind of he'd been on a pedestal, and now we see that pedestal is broken.
Yeah,
Um, we had so much of just kind of Osha's and arguably even Jackie and Yord's opinions of him, shaping so much of what we saw. We saw the repentant old man. We didn't see the impulsive, kind of reckless,
fly by the seat of my pants
brash
kind of.
Jedi. So
Yeah,
we see him now, and we see him arguably make a mistake from the beginning, that none of this ever should have really spiraled the way it did.
Yeah. Nate, what about you? Did you like what? I mean, what did you think about Saul's character in general? He's on, excuse me, on our show. He's been kind of a staple. Like we've really enjoyed like him as a character and as an actor. But I think this episode, for me at least, it kind of, like I said, I lost a little respect for the character.
Yeah. And I can get that. I can. I mean, I will say coming into this episode, firmly my favorite character on the show, and not necessarily because he was this pillar beacon of light. I just love his character. I think the gentleman who's acting is fantastic. The guy who's playing him. So that didn't change per se, but as far as maybe bringing him down a notch, kind of. Here's the thing: is this was 16 years earlier, right? If this was cutting to 2 years ago or 2 months ago or something that happened the week before the show started and stuff like that, that would have impacted it a lot more. Like I liked what you said there, Phil, as far as it being like we've seen the repentant old man. Like if anything, gave me just more insight into what probably is more cautious and stoic and those types of things at the time that we see him in the show proper. I'm eager to hear. We heard what happened 16 years ago, but there's still leaves a 15 and a half or 16-year time gap basically there. That's what happened after that until the show started.
And right? And for a parallel, even within Star Wars, we have prequel Obi-Wan versus original trilogy Obi-Wan. We see him making mistakes with his own Padawan and dealing with the consequences therein.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you think about it, we don't really see that many Jedi, like powerful Jedi when they were younger, seem to just be calm and cool and not have anything like it. What I mean? Even May and Osha, whatever force sensitivity they are further developed, they're neither of them like calm, cool, collected.
Oh, so, not by any means, but they are also children who are growing up in such a drastically different force tradition. They're still growing up with the force, much like any of the Jedi growing up at the temple would be doing. They're still growing up being trained in ways to manipulate the energy around them. But throughout that whole thing, we see just kind of the differences between those two styles of force manipulation, of force utilization. I lost my thread there.
Oh, you're good. You're good. It's it all just kind of comes back around to Soul like being a bit of an asshole in this episode.
No, I mean a little bit.
And like especially towards the end when he's like he chooses one, I mean, and it's all kind of his fault. Like it's a mix of Torben and his fault. And like by the end of this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely painting the Jedi in a terrible light.
I think it's showing that they never were, all knowing, that they never, that they've always been, they were never infallible. They've always been just regular people who have some, neat abilities.
Everyone has issues. Yeah. Back to finish up Justin's Starlight Killer scene.
Yeah.
So his
Ubuntu tree.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that I got his comments out there because he made sure to send them to me. So
yes,
he says Phil did a pretty cool action shot, so I did a cool wide shot of the forest. Reminds me of my happy place, sort of like South Carolina wilderness with a twist of Colorado, a cozy forest retreat. So, and it's very true. It does look like a nice, cozy little area that you could set up camp. To finish up, Jesse says, I like that we get a really good reason for Soul to be reluctant to use his lightsaber these days. And yes, that is probably one of the coolest scenes that we will get to in a minute.
Yeah.
Right now, Soul is talking to the twins, and he kind of like stalks them a little bit. He follows them and like does all the thing. And this actually gets us to Nate's Starlight Killer scene, which comes at the 8-minute and 13-second mark, with Soul scaling up the wall of the, I'm just going to call them as they are, the Night Sister Castle. Why did you pick this particular shot for your scene, Nate?
I mean, I definitely thought it was beautiful in terms of just capturing like the planet and how sort of natural and wild it is, but then also there's the structure here that really has that feeling of, I don't want to say permanence, but it's been there a very, very, very long time. And just, I don't know, I thought it was a beautiful shot, and then just the anticipation of like what is going to be seen and what's going to happen once he actually climbs up to the top and gets in there. And just, I know they used a lot of CG throughout this whole thing, because of course they did, but there were some shots like this where I felt like they put a lot of effort into making it look plain, and that's not necessarily a compliment in most spaces, but just there's nothing really flashy even on there. It's just like beautiful shot of this whole castle, as you put it, right, just there in the mist on the planet, and it captures the whole vibe of really that whole planet just in one shot.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's a nice wide shot for Phil, because Phil loves his wide shots. So it is.
I do love me my establishing shots.
Yeah, and I really like the whole castle scene. It looks so Star Warsy, especially when he's walking up to the gate of it. It's a super cool castle, and even the inside, we get such a good look of the inside of that castle as well. And like, later during the battle, when the witches are all up with their bow and arrows and stuff, like it was pretty cool. Great pick for sure. Speaking of Night Sisters, man, we're just blowing through these segments right now. The next one chimer that we kind of get to, and we're gonna discuss it a little bit, because there's some implications here. But Justin's one chimer is this scene.
A force called here.
I think they're witches.
Night Sisters.
We do not have all the information. Besides, Night Sisters don't raise younglings, let alone train them.
So this is right after Soul kind of sees all the witches and what's going on with the girls and stuff, and they just blatantly bring up Night Sisters, and Indara really like drives it home that Night Sisters don't have kids. They don't do that kind of thing. So I really, really like this, because I've said it from the beginning that they're Night Sisters, and the magic scenes kind of prove that, I guess. It's like early stages of Night Sisterism or something.
Night
And
Sisterhood.
yeah, and I really like that they bring that up and actually talk about it. And it looked like Kelnaka was pretty worried when they bring it up. He's like, "What? What do you mean, Night Sisters? I can't handle that kind of shit." What did you think, Nate, about them? Do you know much about Night Sisters at all, other than?
I don't know a ton of the lore back then. No, I mean, is
Okay.
that fully like affiliated with the dark side? Because that sounds neutral.
Kinda. It's more like Ra's al Ghul type of stuff, where they're like rogue. They use the Force in their own way, and they like to resurrect people from the dead, and that kind of thing. They were in Clone Wars, big in Clone Wars, had some good things in Rebels, and then they were introduced a little more in live action in Ahsoka. So
Yeah, I mean,
they're
that
becoming
definitely reinforced to me the idea that they would be those, from the sense of, such said, hey, they're not, like, because I guess bringing up the fact that they wouldn't train their younglings like that, right, as proof that they can't be Night Sisters, to me rang more as proof of just like, okay, well, clearly you don't know everything about them. You know what I mean? Like, well, they would never do that. And it's like, what? I mean, you're just reading from a textbook that you read in Coruscant or wherever. Like, you've never actually met them. Whoever wrote that book may never have actually met them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're operating on a lot of assumptions there.
Yeah. They did use a lot of crazy Night Sister magic, though. Like, for instance, Coral disappears at the end. She just like fades into dust, and we never see her again. She just disappears. And so, one thing about the Night Sisters that was really cool, the Leslie Headland had this interview. I got this from Nerdist, and she does say that she quotes, what I will say as a tease, if we are able to explore this story more, her species, talking about Coral, will tell you a little bit more about where she ends up. So her species is Zabrak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zabrak, which is Darth Maul's species, and his brothers, like they were that same species, and Zabraks were heavily affiliated with Night Sisters, and they were on Dathomir. Like they basically resided on Dathomir. And so the big theory is that she will end up on Dathomir and kind of be a Zabrak Night Sister.
Kind of establishing the order that we later see on Dathomir.
Yeah. So that like we were talking about earlier, that could be a really cool thread that they could talk about going into later seasons, especially if any of these characters survive, Osha or May or Chimera or whatever, they could go on a hunt for Coral to see if they can find her. Then it'd be a fun story. So it was a good pick for Justin. Thanks, Justin. I hope you're having a good flight right now, and I hope you're still alive, sir. They kind of go into like more discussions about why they're there, and they discussed a vergence. So this is the whole reason. Like this is the biggest part of the show right now that everyone is freaking out about is the vergence of the Force. And that's why they're there. Back to, I guess, My One Chimer. Was that My One Chimer that I just played? I can't remember. But back to My One Chimer. Soul tells Torben about the vergence, and people are really upset because they think that Anakin was the only one that should have had a vergence when these twins were another vergence. Phil, do you think they ruined Star Wars with this? Do you think Anakin's story's been ruined with this?
Not by any means.
Okay.
Not at all.
That's literally as much time as you really want to spend on it, because I am in the same boat.
It's a big galaxy.
And it's not a true vergence. It's a vergence created by the witches. It was something that it's like Thanos snapping his fingers and creating that big cosmic blast that they see. It's a fake, a man-made or a being-made cosmic blast, whereas like if an actual star blow up to give that kind of cosmic blast, that would be natural. So in the same sense, the birth of Anakin and his vergence would have been a natural one that, if we get into more stories of Plagueis and things, was kind of caused by their dealings with the dark side. But at a surface level, Anakin was like the natural vergence, whereas the twins are a more man-made one. So I think the ruining Star Wars bit is a little tiring. They're now just kind of looking for things to bitch about. And so, like I said, I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that really quick. Nate, what about you? Do you think
I think
they've
brought that up a few times throughout all the movies, right? And just so it stands to reason that even long before, back in the Old Republic era, they still would have been going around looking for those differences, right? And that, when it's clearly not something that is a new idea, when like Obi-Wan brings it up about Anakin in front of the council for the first time. And Mace Windu's, I believe it was Mace Windu, very suspiciously is like, you believe this is centered around a person, like that in and of itself make it incredibly unique. So just the fact that they stumbled across one and these twins are a part of it does not immediately elevate them to that level of like, oh, okay, then they're saying they're as powerful as Anakin or anything like that. But also in the point of a big galaxy, and it's hundreds of years. I mean, I'm probably screwing with the timeline. There's people out there like it's 3,700 years. I don't know. I just know it's far enough removed that like any of these characters that are living in the Old Republic era are myths by the time we get to the actual proper canon era of Star Wars. So I don't see it impacting it, but we talked about it before we started recording, right? Like some people they have that head canon, and if something violates it, then it's immediately just 0 out of 10. You killed my childhood. Stop ruining Star Wars.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. And I'm glad that like not everyone's a hater, and that they're not everyone's making up excuses to hate the show. Excuse me, I swallowed my
Josh,
water.
dude, I thought after I'm telling you, man, 5 minutes into the show, I thought I was gonna have to come on and be like, so you want me to tell you how I really feel, or do you want me to keep Star Wars fans listening? Because I honestly thought it was gonna be a lot of just, I don't know, the first 10 minutes or so didn't give me the best first impression. I know what they were going for. It probably pulled a lot of the younger audience, but for me, it put me on the fence until things actually kind of down a bit and started telling a story. And it's like, all right, I'll sit down, I'll invest my time.
Yeah, for sure. Jesse says, I don't think Anakin was made by a virgin. Wasn't there more of an intent behind his creation? I mean, according to the comics and stuff, there was like Plagueis and Sidious were messing with the dark side and trying to create life themselves. And the Force kind of responded and created life in Shmi. Although there are a couple comics that kind of imply that Palpatine created Anakin through the Force and basically put her in Shmi. So there's weird things out there, but essentially Anakin was like in episode 1 when he's talking to Mace Windu, he says, "You believe the Virgins is this boy?"
Centered around this boy.
Yeah.
When they were talking, when Qui-Gon was talking to Shmi in episode 1, right? She very writes, just says there was a father, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we got an almost exact copy of that line from the witches when they were asked about who their father was, right? Didn't they say almost that verbatim?
Yep.
Pretty much, yeah.
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 And I love the idea with May and Osha that they may have initially been that, the intent may have initially been to create one powerful being split into those two bodies, that the twin aspect of things was intentional.
Yeah. And on the subject of twins, see, this is perfect. This is actually it brings us into Phil's one-chimer. So I'm going to go ahead and play that really quick.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
So their noble intentions are to come take the twins because they're the virgins in the Force, and they're supposed to take this virgins back to the council. But as she says, their noble intentions will mess them up. Phil, why did you pick this particular line?
I just thought it was good foreshadowing because we as viewers know that these Jedi are doomed. At least 3 of them anyway.
Soul probably too. After this episode, definitely.
And we know that further down the line, we run into the Clone Wars and Order 66 and the Jedi being wiped out, and how much of that was because of the altruism, because of the attempts to be, the noble Jedi, because of all of their well-meaning intent to go save this young slave boy from his life of poverty on Tatooine. Now suddenly everything's blown up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was why I picked that one. I was like, it's a nice bit of build up to the inevitable fate of the Jedi down the line.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's really good foreshadowing, and it's just I like that actress a lot. She delivers that line really well.
She's so good.
I think
she did really good.
She did really well in this entire, like, her few scenes that she had, but I really yeah, I really liked their whole discussion there. And you can definitely see the difference between Coral and Mother Anasea. Like,
Yeah.
one wants peace, the other one just really wants to rip their heads off. So that's a Zabrak for you, though. Let's see. We did kind of find out a little later on, just on this topic of twins, that they were split. They might have been one being that was split into two, and that might have been the virgins that happened.
I mean, technically speaking, that's what happens with identical twins anyway, but
but they made it seem like identical twins
like it
still
was
have some differences, but
yeah.
these twins had zero differences at all. I
Yeah,
mean,
they were
we can see that one of them's taller than the other one, but like that's just me.
You just killed the illusion for me, Josh.
It was a strange kind of tidbit. I don't really know how to take that. Like, is that supposed to make them even more special, or does that mean that one of them's expendable?
Or can they not exist without both of them?
Yeah. That would be the
Like
direction
things
I'd go
not
with
stay
that
in
one.
balance if they're not both alive.
Okay, like a dyad kind of.
Yeah. Like their power, but unable
I guess
to survive without the other.
it'd be a stronger dyad, or stronger than a dyad, because
Yeah.
in Star Wars, Rey was able to live after Kylo Ren died. Ugh, God. But that would actually be kind of interesting to see, like, maybe they lose their power, or they gain strength whenever they're around their sister or something. Like, who knows?
Or just
The power of
whatever
one,
darkness
power of
in the other
two.
one and just comes to them. If it's
Yeah.
not being like, because now maybe they both seem to be equal parts light and dark as far as when you look at them, really, once you've gotten through a few episodes. So maybe that's part of what's keeping them balanced, right? And if that goes out, then May or Osha or whoever survives, I see them both being alive after the next episode. I think one of them will be, but I don't think they'll both live.
Interesting. Well, on that note, we're going to split this episode up a little bit, and we're doing things a little differently over here at Quest Me. We've been having a lot of fun talking about Star Wars so far. It's been almost an hour talking about the Acolyte, so I figured we could take a short little trip to a bar far away, where Phil tells us what we've been drinking tonight.
All right. So tonight's cocktail is the Power of Two. This is
What a segue into this.
I know, right? Right? Oh, yeah. No, so the Power of Two is a bit of a riff on a gimlet, or a daiquiri, more of a riff on a daiquiri. It's rum, lime juice, and syrup. But in this case, I went with black magic rum because, one, it's thematically just always fun, and two, it's kind of my standard, bar staple for dark rums. So an ounce of black magic rum, an ounce of deadhead rum, which is one that I've utilized in a few different tiki-inspired cocktails. Another just different style of dark spiced rum. An ounce of lime juice, a half ounce of demerara syrup, and a half ounce of elderberry syrup. The elderberry syrup I actually got from one of my coworkers at the Renaissance Fair. So I didn't make it, but it is homemade. But it is
now we can say you smell of elderberries.
Yes, exactly. But it is just gorgeous color.
Yeah, look at that. Oh my God, your drinks are just I say it every week. They're always just so freaking fancy.
It's a fun hobby.
Yeah, love it.
But yeah, it is kind of tart because of like the elderberry syrup and the lime. But it's balanced really well with the flavor profiles of the two different rums.
Yeah,
Um,
for
so
sure.
it's delicious. Please drink responsibly.
Yes, as always. Excellent. Thank you, Phil.
Yee. We'll have the recipe
Um,
in the show notes.
Yep, as always. To kick things off for the second half here, Jesse asks, "Do we think either twin switches sides now that they have more perspective on what happened? Osha feels angry. Maybe May is more understanding." That's actually a, a good question that I had written down about the two. Um, I don't. I actually think Osha is going to switch sides and more agree with May
Hmm.
at this point, that they're going to kind of take over and maybe even both of them team up to kill Soul.
And that was the vibe I was getting from the very end of last week's episode when Osha puts on Chimere's helmet.
Yeah.
There's this
And I
whole thought of, okay, are we going to see her actually like? I think we will see her at least pretend to switch sides, though how much of that is actually her feeling that way and how much of that is just kind of getting revenge on Chimere for what he's done to kind of turn her sister down the path she's on.
yeah, and I wouldn't blame either one of them after seeing that story and what actually happened. Like I'm kind of like, yeah, May, do what you got to do. I mean, those
See,
guys
and
kind of
May knows that happened, right? OSHA still doesn't know that's what happened,
exactly.
right? And while May's been learning, this truth, or at least what we're led to believe is the truth from Soul, OSHA's head's been, filled up by Chimere, right? That's how you say it.
Chimere, yep.
Yeah, the longest I was like, just call him the stranger. That was easier, right? But God, switch sides. I don't know. I mean, my only question would be, would they end up on the same side as the other at the end, or did they both end up flopping? Like I'm with you, Phil. Like the end, that's where I start to get slight worries that they might cop out. Is like I got a little bit of vibes of where it's like, not to bring up anything salt in the wound type thing, right? But where it's like, oh my God, like Ray might actually just join Kylo Ren and like join the dark side, and how dark would that be? And then they totally went in the opposite direction. Like I'm kind of hoping they go somewhere with this whole OSHA like dark side potential type thing. But I mean, we'll see. When you start to say that, though, then, because at first you said, like, Soul's not going to survive. And I was like, he's the best character, he has to. We start talking about this. I'm like, yeah, he's dead. Over or under in the first half of the episode.
Yeah, like, and I mean, I would think that personally, I would just get rid of all of those Jedi and let's focus on a story of Chimere, Osha, and May, and like have them going around the galaxy and kind of finding new little Sith. You know what I mean? And then you could introduce your Plagueis and do all that stuff. But I do like this thing of, if Osha turns against Soul, do the sisters join Coral and start the Night Sisters on Dathomir? That is a possibility, just because the twins were slated to run the coven, and so if they were to go, who knows, maybe one of them dies and the other one ends up bringing them back to life, and they're like, holy shit, there's something to let's start a religion over it. There could be some major event that sparks that, and I would be all about it. Them on the run trying to find a planet for them to live on, and by the end of the season, they get to be on Dathomir. But I don't think it's going to go in the Night Sister route, because this is about a Sith acolyte. It's supposed to be more about how the Sith infiltrated, the Jedi, basically, because they did. I mean, they got Count Dooku. They had Sifo Dyas. They got their hands into a lot of stuff. So I think this is kind of the beginnings of that.
Mm-hmm.
beginnings of the Night Sisters. They could do a cool spin-off with Coral where she goes to Dathomir and you see that. I liked Coral. I liked her character and I liked the actress. She did a really good job. Especially this episode. Her battle scenes with Soul were super cool. Right after Soul kills Mother Anastasia, oh my god, she like turns into that like smoke plume. That's funny. That's my Starlight Killer scene. But she turns into that smoke plume. It's at the 28-minute 46-second mark, and like the Jedi just kind of freak out. They have no idea what the fuck's going on. And
Because this suddenly turned into an episode of Lost, and J.J. Abrams wasn't even around.
see, I never watched Lost, so I have no idea. But it
Yay,
was
smoke monster jokes.
it was interesting to see Soul just whip out his lightsaber immediately and go for the kill.
Oh,
Because-
his combat instincts are top notch.
Well, and you know, at the beginning of the series and basically the whole series, he's been all about not pulling his weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this has something to do with that?
I would absolutely say that this is why he is so reluctant to draw his lightsaber later on.
Yeah, same. I just gotta have somebody else, clarify that for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a strong possibility. I think it's the strongest contender we've got for why he is relatively pacifist at this point in his career.
Right. But yeah, just this whole 10 seconds of the episode was really, really cool. The effects on Mother Anastasia were top notch with her like turning into like a weird demon, and then Coral like getting into her fight stance, getting ready to just mess things up, and then get into that little scuffle with Soul. The choreography on that was really cool. And when the random explosion happened is when he finally disarms her, and gets her kind of off his back. But that's one of my qualms with this episode is the random explosion. Like I assumed that we would get an answer for how that happened, like why there was why there were big explosions in the building just from a small fire that May had lit. Did the fire really get that big? I
I
don't.
mean, do candles burn hot enough to melt steel beams? I don't know. Did we go on that route? Like,
It was very clearly more of a kerosene lamp kind of thing, because
I did notice some oil on the ground.
Yeah, there was fuel that had spilled all over. I actually love that we got to see that portion of things from May's perspective.
Yeah,
and just realize, she wanted to burn her sister's book, but she was not intending for it to. She was very clearly caught off guard by how quickly it burned.
Yeah.
Leading her to drop the lamp. So
yeah, it just seemed fishy to me that it was just kind of one of those Deus Ex Machinas. It's like, here's a big explosion to distract
but I mean,
everybody.
back to just the May aspect of it, though, it makes more sense in character for what we knew of May at the time. It makes more sense for it to have been an accident than for her to suddenly just be like, if I can't have you, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. Just kind of proves that May's kind of a little dick. But also,
she's a great person, but
she was influenced by Coral pretty heavily on that, because Coral, like really got into her head and was like, "Go stop your sister. Go keep her from getting out." So, I mean, she's 10 years old or something. So of course she's heavily influenced by her mom, and she was doing whatever she could. To me, it just didn't seem like that was very plausible. I guess maybe it is space. It's Star Wars. I can't go down that road. It is what it is. It's made for kids, and some things are not meant to really be explained. So, and the explosion did kind of kick off everything else. So, all right. we'll move on from that and get to the really fun stuff. The fight scenes. These were some of the better fight scenes of our Star Wars live action Disney Plus series for sure. The fight with Chimera. This is the second best fight scene of the series. Don't get that wrong, because the Chimera fight is by far the best fight in the series, if not in all of Disney Plus. But this one is a very close second, and it was a lot of fun to finally see the Wookiee
We have
do
been
his thing.
waiting. We've been
Yeah,
waiting.
Phil has been waiting very, very
almost
patiently.
2 months.
Yeah.
After seeing those scenes in the trailer, we've been waiting almost 2 months to see Kelnaka in action.
Yeah, and he finally did, and it was wonderful.
Ah,
He's taken over by the witches, and he's doing his Wookiee thing, and Phil's Starlight Killer scene comes in during this scene with one of the coolest shots for sure. It's at the 32-minute 36-second mark, and it is Soul dodging Kelnaka. So go ahead, Phil. Take it away.
this whole sequence within this fight was so well choreographed. It was just watching Kelnaka fighting so hard to protect himself, but also not, watching Soul fight so hard to protect himself, but not to kill Kelnaka in the process. And
Very
just
defensive for sure.
incredibly defensive. Especially when faced with an opponent who is not only physically much larger and stronger than you, but is also at least as skilled in Force and is able to utilize all of those abilities against you.
Yeah.
I mean, if this were a video game, this would be the boss fight you'd be dreading.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I think, I mean, was he being controlled by all of those witches? All of them were connected to him?
Yeah.
Seemed like
I
it.
mean, that was the power of many at work.
And did they all die? Like, I don't.
That was the vibe I got from it, was that they were so in tune for this that the feedback caused when Indara, broke Kelnaka free, at the very least incapacitated all of them. Whether or not they were actually dead, who knows? But they were not functional. They were not conscious. And it explains why, it explains why we see them all drop, like as a, drop the way they did. Because we'd talked, a few weeks ago, we talked about the potential for them to have been poisoned with the bunta tree, with the leaves from the bunta tree. And just the idea that all of them would have reacted within the same rough time period across age and species, that all of them would have reacted the same way to the bunta, is a little... it's not how poison works.
Yeah, and I don't feel like they all died right there. I feel like what killed them was the castle collapsing.
Yeah, no, I think it was more likely that any of them who did die outright died because of the fire and the castle collapsing.
Yeah.
Not because, but they were very clearly incapacitated by Indara forcing them out of that control loop.
Yeah. It seemed like, it was a kind of a brutal neck snap, I feel like.
Oh yeah. No,
so, and maybe that was something, that it was such a force, like the neck snap was so strong that it killed them all. But yeah, that was just kind of weird to me as well. Like they didn't really go into great detail about that. And maybe that's on purpose. Maybe it's some of them survived and they're with Coral, and
it could be that the only one who actually died that night was Mother Anasea.
Yeah, that's very true. And that,
I do have to say that fight was pretty awesome. I was looking forward to it, but I was a little bit worried it might be silly. Like, I don't want to hate on Yoda. I love Yoda. You always hear that he used to be an amazing swordsman, but like, one or two of his sword fights, especially the one against Count Dooku, it's just kind of silly looking. I mean, it
Yes.
honestly kind of is. Like, and I thought they did a really good job. It's like, okay, cool. Like, that's like a Wookiee Jedi like fighting. That's what I would expect to see. You know, I did think it was a little bit funny when Soul like managed to disarm him at one point, or when Dick gets disarmed at one point, just because it was like perfect. You know, like that's exactly what you want. Now you're in a hand-to-hand fight with a Wookiee.
With a Wookiee.
That's much better. You know,
I loved the other shot I was considering pulling for this was the one of Kilnaka grabbing Torben and pulling him up off of the ground with the Force in order to slam him into the wall.
Yeah.
Poor Torben.
I mean, Torben deserved everything he got in this episode and more, but like he did get pretty beat up.
Yeah.
I did like his great shot, by the way. Great pick for that shot. Thank you. I did like his scene with when they showed Mother Anastasia getting into his head.
Mm-hmm.
And like
seeing what he saw.
Yeah.
No, that was spectacular.
And she really played on his like, I want to go home thing. And I mean, they got to go home. It was not the way
they went back to Coruscant.
Wasn't the way they really intended on going back to Coruscant, but he did get to go back home. I think he was like really upset once, they sent him off and then they didn't go back home the first time. He was like, God damn it, she promised me that we'd go back home. I just want to stop eating these porgs or whatever. So yeah, the fight though, I mean, all the way through, like even with the bow and arrows, with Torben deflecting all those things, that's a Night Sister thing too, having the bow and arrows.
Oh
so
yeah,
it's very very close. And
Torben's combat skills were not anything to sneeze at. I mean, he was good.
Yeah,
especially for a Padawan.
Yeah, I like when he tie-bowed it up and he went double time.
Right?
And started spinning the blade way faster to block all the arrows. Like that was a really cool scene. And just all around, even when Indara shows up and saves the day basically. And I know you were hating on Carrie-Anne Moss a little bit earlier, but she was pretty good in this episode.
I mean, it's not just emote. Like I just want to see her like in real life have an argument with somebody. Be like, okay, she can raise her voice. Because like if you go watch most every movie she's been in, whether she's telling someone she's in love with them, whether she's telling someone she's shy, whether she's telling someone she's worried or they need to panic, it is the same monotone delivery. I'll give her a little bit of a pass for two reasons in this. One is she's playing a Jedi who's kind of supposed to be that way. And two is they got the same exact type of performance out of Liam Neeson when they asked him to play. So I'm not a fan of her. So I was really happy to see that she's kind of relegated to like a supporting character. I think another reason for that too, and I could just way out of touch with like who's hot and in popular stuff nowadays and everything, but like the rest of the cast is not really anybody where I'm pointing at them and be like, oh, it's the guy from that, or like, oh yeah, I've seen her in this. Like it's maybe it'll get lost in their character.
Yeah.
So, that being said, she did do pretty good in this episode compared to, again, when they very initially first sort of showed her in the show, and she had those first few dialogue before getting killed. I was like, oh God, no. Yeah, I just thought like the only person that got hooked by being like, whoo, she's dead. Let's watch.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone hating on Carrie-Anne Moss, but I see it. I see where you're coming from now that you like bring those things to light. It makes sense. But I loved her interaction with Soul in the very end of this episode when she like grabs.
I think that was her strongest acting of the season for sure.
And you can tell she's like, I should punch you so many times in the face right now, but I'm just gonna tell you that I'm gonna cover your ass, and you're gonna.
Yeah, when she told her basically like that's not for her. Like basically at this point you've created such a mess. Like now you have to train her.
Yep. So yeah, I really did I liked all of their performances in this. Torben being a whiny little girl the whole time about wanting to go home was great. Kelnaka, I mean,
What do you
obviously,
think Torben's feelings are on sand?
I bet he thinks it's coarse and gets everywhere, but I mean, that's
It
just
is
Torben, right?
irritating.
Yeah, and Kelnaka was great. He Jonas, Jonas, what's his last name?
Suotomo.
Yeah, thank you. He
Yeah.
played Chewie in the later episodes. He's
Yep.
played Chewie for a while now, so he always does a good job. And yeah, I love the Wookiee roar when he's charging during these fights and like jumping and getting all crazy. So
Wookiee with a lightsaber, man. It's horrifying.
yeah, very, very fun battle scene though, and a good way to wrap up that initial story from episode 3. We did get a lot of questions answered on this. There were a couple new questions though, I feel like. I mean, last week I kind of went back to last week's notes, and the biggest question I had was what the hell happened on Brendock. So we got that answered. That was the biggest one. The other question was who's Chimere and where does he come from? That will hopefully come in the next episode, at least maybe give us a little bit of insight. But now we have, where's Coral? Where did she end up going? Because she just disappeared. And even Leslie Headland in that interview said, no body, no death. So she's clearly still alive somewhere. What did they actually tell the council? This is where I get into the Indara's like secretive side, because what did they really tell the council? And are we actually going to see that? And then the third question that brings up, and this goes back to right before they go attack the castle, and Indara's like, go out to camp, I'm going to talk to the council and we'll see what we're going to do. Did she actually talk to the council right there? Did she actually call them and get in touch? Or did she just tell Soul, we're not going to mess with these girls, we're not going to take them, we're just going to sweep this under the rug and leave these people alone? Because to me, with her later cover up, it seems like it's a lot easier to cover something up that wasn't mentioned before. Do you think, like, I think she might be a little bit more secretive than she kind of leads on?
I think what they tell the council is going to be a lot closer to what we saw in episode 3, right? In terms of that sort of distorted version of events.
And part of why Osha remembers it the way that she does.
Yeah.
If that's the version she was hearing the whole time that she was training under Soul.
Yeah, that's fair. It just seemed, I don't know, it seemed fishy. Her just kind of digging into her a little bit, and it kind of makes me think maybe she's still alive at the same time. Because if she's really good at keeping secrets and doing that kind of thing, who's to say she's not still alive?
Me.
Yeah. All right. You're right. You're probably the only one. That's
you asked where's Chimere come from and who is he, right? Did I just read this as a fan theory? Did I invent this myself, or like imagine a scene in there? Like, haven't we gotten some indication that he was a Padawan at some point?
Yes. Some indications, some hints, but no official confirmation.
I think the biggest theory right now is that he was Venestra Rowe's apprentice a long time ago. The green lady with the whip.
Right.
I think that's the going theory right now. Which is, it's funny you bring that up. So Nate actually, his one chimer, I allowed this to happen because he's never been on Quest Me before, and I always like to ask people how they've liked the entire episode, and we went through that earlier. But Nate's one chimer is actually Chimere from last week, and so I was like, it has to be really good if
we're pulling from another episode,
from another episode. And I was like, this is great. So let's play this one really quick, and then we'll talk about it.
If you keep me here, Soul comes to you. He's found me before, and his strength in the Force is very powerful.
You think that's his strength? That's your strength in the Force, Osha.
Yeah, right.
So-
And I think he goes on to say, so they probably should have told you that, or someone should have told you that. Like, the fact that he was able to find her was not because Soul was so powerful with the Force and all those things. It's because she is so powerful with the Force. That's actually how they stumbled across her in the first place. And like that, to me, when I say like, may she flip sides and that type of thing, I kind of hope that she does. Like that in combination now with what her sister knows about what really happened that night, it just undercuts like so much of what she's probably built her life and her belief around. Soul, this like savior who's so powerful, who this and that. It's like, no, you're the powerful one. Like he found you because you were flashing like a lighthouse in the night. And just like that also, I think maybe that's where, if it wasn't ever expressly said, like in that scene, I very much got that feeling of like, he sounds like a jaded Padawan, like a jaded former Padawan.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you bring that up because, God, this has been a great episode. But because one of my last questions of this was Soul that bad of a master that Osha failed? And I think it kind of correlates with Soul being so gung ho to get a Padawan and doing it a little bit early, and kind of failing Osha more than she failed out of the Jedi Academy. And I bet a lot of that is because she is so powerful and he didn't really know how to handle that.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, I like that. I like that line a lot, especially for, this episode, because it does kind of prove that they were there for the twins and for that Vergence. The Vergence was basically them. And so, if they weren't as powerful in the Force, I mean, you even saw May defend herself against Coral. Like Coral started swinging on her and she like blocked her blows and kind of pushed her back. And that's when Coral was like, yeah, go get your sister. You're a badass,
You can do this.
So they were powerful in the Force, like from the get-go. And I think you're right that that Chimera is kind of getting into Osha's head there, and
I don't even know if he's lying to her by saying that is the thing, right?
No,
That's
he's
why
not.
I loved it
He's
so
not.
much. Is it felt true, and it also felt like in that moment, as she heard it, that she probably felt a tinge of like her ability to relate to what May must have learned from him and heard from him, and how maybe he's not just this evil person who corrupted her sister. Maybe he has some truth.
And I don't think he is lying. I think that, like I said, he's just getting into her head and bringing more stuff to light that she's thinking about that she never thought about before,
or at least from different perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To wrap that up, Jesse asks, do you think Soul lives through the next episode? No, I do not. I think that all 4 of those Jedi are going to end up being gone by this, and I think we're going to have more of a Vernestra Rowe story moving forward. And we also got to make room for Yoda moving forward if they have another season, because they got to bring Yoda in, right? Come on. He's alive. He's there. Let's do it. And talk about Kelnaka. Did we not talk about Kelnaka? I thought we
did.
That
was like a 15-minute old post before we.
Oh, okay. My bad. God, I'm sorry.
Nah, that was Jesse asking us to talk about Kelnaka when we were talking about the fight sequence.
Oh, okay. So yeah, like I said, there was that one question: was Soul that bad of a master? And then finally, we still don't know how May survived or where Chimera came from. I'm pretty sure we're going to get those answers here in the next episode, at least partial answers. So I believe that's all that I have for my notes. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to cover before we get into the rating?
I think we talked pretty good, man. I'm glad we've been able to come on. Like I said, and if I had to follow an episode, I'm glad this one, not like episode 3, where I said, as much as I liked it, like I don't know what they're doing.
There was a lot of questions after episode 3, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I think we've pretty solidly covered stuff so far.
Cool. Well then, let's do this. Let's get on to the last segment. It's the Tusken Raider, the part of the show where we rate each episode Excuse me. So let's see. We're gonna rate this episode out of 10. What should we do? 10 Kelnock? No. 10 Wookiees? No. I don't know. 10 ghosts, 10 force witches. I don't know. 10 porgs. Let's rate it out of 10 porgs. Whatever. 1 out of 10. Nate, if you had to rate this episode, what would you rate this episode out of 10?
Probably give it a good solid 7. I think if it hadn't been for the fact that it followed what I think was the strongest episode in the entire season by far, I might even been an 8. I thought it was really good. It was definitely in the better half of, what we had 7 episodes so far. I'd put it in the top 3. It's just that was episode 6 was a tough one to follow. I thought that was pretty much perfect. So yeah, I'd give it 7.
All right. Phil, what about you?
I gotta agree. It was a very last week's episode was a very, very tough episode to follow. That said, for the Rashomon aspect, for the combat sequences, for the answers, and for those new questions, I'm gonna give it an 8.
All right. That's fair. I started this episode, like I said, I was so in and out of sleep during the first watch, and what I saw during the first watch, it was very. So I started it with a 5 because I always do my initial rating, and I started with a 5. Then as I started kind of like thinking about it, I brought it up to a 6, and then I watched it again, and I brought it up to a full-on 7.5. So, and I think for all those same reasons that you guys talked about. The one thing that keeps it from being an 8 or higher is that damn song at the end. I still don't think it needs to be there. And just, the random explosions and stuff. It just, I don't know. I would have liked to see a little bit more of like, I don't know. Those are my dumb little qualms. But other than that, I did really like this episode, and I'm extremely excited for the finale. I'm not as excited for Quest Me to kind of go away for a little while, but I believe the next thing we're talking about is probably going to be Skeleton Crew. We might have a few little episodes sprinkled in here and there, some book club episodes, but yeah, this is next week we have what Erin's going to be on. It's going to be a tough one for her. That's a big episode for her, so I'm sure she's going to bring the heat though.
It'll be good. She's excited to come back.
Yeah. So Nate, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners where they can find your podcast and kind of what you guys do?
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain Sports Room, or you might see abbreviated RMSR. You can find us under that on YouTube. You can also find us there on TikTok as well. It's a quiet time of year as far as YouTube longer format content goes right now, but currently trash talking all 32 teams in the NFL in the run up to the NFL season.
Oh,
I'm not saying we're getting any death threats, but I've been getting a lot of insults about my looks. So I
it's
think
a
we're doing
wonderful
something
series.
right.
It's a wonderful series. Like they go through each team, and it's like the Miami Dolphins are trash. Why? Here's why.
Yeah, that one we had to record a few times because he was like, "You're screaming. Why don't you turn your mic maybe off and do it again?" Right. But so we talk local sports. We definitely going to be breaking down every single Nuggets game this season. Going to be talking a lot about things as far as how that team moves forward. As I said before we even got started, I'm a huge Nuggets fan, so we talk a lot of Nuggets on there. As I said, it's kind of in the low part of the season right now, so if you're looking for us, I would look on TikTok. As well, you can find us on Facebook under Rocky Mountain Sports Room as well, which links to all that same content. But as we get into the season, we'll have more longer format, podcasts kind of breaking down the games and what went well, and trying to make sense of why we're 5-12. I do not have high hopes for these Broncos.
No, me either. I'm right with you. I still love my team, of course, but I'm right with you.
Have to, right?
Yeah. Of course, all those links are in the show notes, and I will try and link some fun little TikTok videos in those show notes as well, because those little trash videos are a good time. And I really had fun coming on the show and talking basketball and sports with you guys. I'm big fan of sports. So anytime you want me back, just give me a call. I'll be there. So
Vice versa.
thank you again for coming. Thanks, Phil, for being here. It's always great to talk Star Wars with friends. We're gonna try and do a little bit of a sign off here, and then I'll play the closing video. So basically, what we do, Nate, is I point at your screen and you go, "I'm Nate," and then that's it.
I say my name though, right?
Yes, correct. So
Okay.
for Quest Me, I have been your host.
I'm Nate. Bring it, done it. First cut.
Yeah. All right. So for Quest Me, I have been your host.
I'm Nate.
I'm Phil.
And the second take is always the best take. Of course, my name is Josh. Thank you all for checking out Quest Me this week. Thanks, Jesse, and everyone that was in the chat. It's always fun to hang out with you guys. As always, we will be back next week. May the Force be with you.